We're in number 6, Hilchos Tshuva. So the Rambam had explained, based on the Gemara, what the world to come is. That there are no physical needs. We're not subject to anything in the physical existence. And all it is what? Basking in the divine presence, which there's nothing which is the equivalent of that. So the Rambam writes, Shema tekel beinecha tovezu. Maybe you'll take this lightly, what we're speaking about. The sidma she'en schara mitzvos, and there's no such thing as reward for mitzvos, for doing the right thing. Yos odom sholem b'darkei emes, and a person who lives a proper life and he follows a path of truth, ela diyosa ocha v'shoseh by cholos tovos. The reward is that ultimately, like a person in the physical world, you succeed and you're a responsible employee, you're paid accordingly. So maybe also, if you live as that complete person, that upright person of value and character, also you're compensated. God provides good food, quality food. Ubol tsuros knows, we left off with this. And a person cohabits with beautiful forms, meaning with beautiful women, being all the most beautiful women available to you to indulge to your heart's desire. V'lo feish big day sheish, and God gives you attire, linen garments, v'rikmo embroidered, v'shochein b'olei you live in ivory palaces, mishtamish b'klei chesed v'zov, and your cutlery and your vessels are made of silver and gold. In that context, the level of opulence is one of a kind. That's what the world comes about. It's what people wish all their lives for. Not everybody, but certain people, many people do. Like these foolish Arabs, what they consider what the world to come is. They are evil and they're immersed in promiscuity. This Rambam is referring to the Arabs. He's writing this back in the year 1150. Nothing has changed. But the Chachomim, the wise men, and people of intelligence, Yedu, all that, the food, anything in the physical realm, is something which it has no innate value. The Hevelheim, and it's all vanity. Ve'bem to'elis, it has no purpose. Ve'nu tova gedola etzleinu b'olam hazeh. Hear this? And even in this world, our needs, having physical needs, it's really a drawback. You know, if I would say to you, I'll give you a pill that will nourish you. Once you take it, you don't have to eat for the rest of your life. Right? Would you take it? Say, well, what about the enjoyment of food? I'm not going to be able to savor the foods and salivate over this and that. But you realize there's a cost factor in that. It's time. You have to consume it. You have to digest it. It has its side effects. Isn't it better not to be preoccupied with things which aren't the ultimate necessity? So all this is to satisfy a need. All that he spoke about, what people believe the world to come is in the physical context. Those are needs. Well, we're speaking about a wise person. It's not a need. It's something you provide with, not because you have a need. It's the ultimate in reward. Not because you need it. It enhances you. It envelops you. It brings you to levels which humanly, it's not possible to achieve those levels. All these things are necessities because we're physical beings. Therefore, we have to be maintained. But it has no innate value other than maintaining ourselves. You know, we speak about a gluttonous person. A person's a glutton, a hedonist. Is that something which is a positive classification or negative? It's negative. Why? He's a hedonist. He lives high in the hog. He wants to have his head in the feed bag, and he can afford it. But it's not seen as a fine person. Eating is necessary. You enjoy, good. But to say that's what life is all about, that ultimately you should arrive at a level that you have it at an unlimited level, every one of these areas of desire. So this goes beyond hedonism, exaggerated to the 10,000th power. These are all physical needs. One of the 13 tenets of Jewish belief is Hashem is not subject to the physical, which the body is, illness, needs. God has no needs. A person's a needy person. You're needy. A person who's needy, if you don't provide what's needed, you can't continue. The Chafetz Chaim points out that a human being, you live healthy, you live responsibly, and you nourish your body, and you nourish it to the maximum. What happens 3-4 days later? It has to be replenished. If it's not replenished, what happens? The body starts withering, starts waning. And if time passes beyond that point, eventually a person would die. But last week you was fully hydrated, fully nourished, everything. It's a continuous process. You have to add fuel to the system. If you don't add fuel to the system, person dies. The energy in a mitzvah, what is the sustenance for the soul? Forever. The innate value of every mitzvah has an unlimited energy which energizes the soul. It makes the soul have a capacity, it's able to ultimately to live on eternally. And that eternal value allows you to bask in what? In God's presence, which is the ultimate level. You have a relationship with the Creator. You have a relationship with what? With something that's absolute, at every level absolute. The soul, the spiritual component doesn't desire any of this, and yearns for it. These are all physical needs. The whole concept of craving. What is the basis to crave? It's a deficiency. When a person is deficient, I'll give you an example. A person eats to his full. In Rome, they used to have these orgies. They would eat, and then they would force themselves to regurgitate to continue eating. I mean, we thank God we can't even relate to it. Here you fill to the point, you feel your intestines are going to burst. And they had such a desire to eat, a level of hedonism, they would force themselves to regurgitate to be able to eat again. But it's what you call, it's sick. It's a sickness. It's only because the body craves. But craving is an indication of there's a need, there's a deficiency. You crave what you don't have. The soul doesn't crave. The soul has no needs. So craving, needing, continuously addressing a need is a shortcoming. The soul has no needs. Whatever the soul has in the world to come is what it attained a level of accomplishment. It's worthy to be put in a certain context. That context is the ultimate context, not because it's a need. It's exposed to something which is the ultimate. That's the concept. He says the reason why we have to be involved in material is to maintain the healthiness and the function of the body. But if there's no longer a body, all these needs come to an end. They no longer exist. People said, we have to have, Planned Parenthood. You realize if people have families, eventually there's not enough in existence to be able to feed the world population. Therefore, we have to tone down on on family, not more than 2 children per family. But a person will have a 6-car garage with the consumption on that level is the equivalent of 100 people. You understand? Physical is need. You have to maintain it. It's very interesting. You know, the Talmud is divided into 6 sections. The first section of Talmud is called Zeroim. It has to do with planting seeds. But based on a verse, it's called Emunah. Emunah means belief. Why is it called Emunah? Because a farmer, he can have the best seed, he can have the best soil, but if he doesn't have rain, nothing grows. If you have blight, all your toil is for naught. If you have locust, again, it's for naught. If you have other levels of infestation, what have you accomplished? So the farmer is forced, because of his predicament, he has to pray to a higher power, whatever he believes in, that despite everything that is going for him, if God doesn't somehow also join and provide what's needed, he goes nowhere with it as a farmer. Agriculture is worthless. So a farmer, because of his situation, is forced to be in a position that he has to believe in a higher power. He has to believe in God. Because unless God provides the rain and provides the protection for his crop, there's no success. But all that worry, all that time, I rise at dawn, I work till nightfall. Why? Why? Because we have needs. The body has to be maintained. I have to earn a living because we have to support ourselves. But if there's no body, there's no need. The last mission in Kedushin speaks about where Rameir says a bear has tremendous strength. A Kodiak bear, a polar bear. Have you ever seen a bear being a porter? But a human being struggles under the weight of whatever he's moving, he's a porter. Have you ever seen, and gives many examples, have you seen any species that is concerned about its livelihood, but a human being is consumed with it? So what's it all about? Because God provides for the animal. It exists in its habitat. Its existence is provided based on the way God puts it. It has no worries. A human being has worries and has needs, and will consume with those worries and those needs. So in a certain way, who's in the better position? The animal or the human being? In regard to that, the human being is not in such a great position because we consume with our needs and our worries. Because unless we have what we create ourselves, it doesn't happen. But if you have faith in God and you do what you're supposed to do, God is the provider. He will provide. As it says in the second paragraph of the Shema, if you observe my mitzvos and you this and this and this, God will provide. And you have nothing to worry. The rains will come in that time. You'll reap your fields and this and that. You won't have nothing to worry about. So if the Jew himself has faith, you don't worry. As long as you do the right thing, you don't worry. I'll give you an example. You have money in the bank, and there's any check you want to write, you could write. Do you worry about where the next dime is coming from? The money's in the bank. God says, if you do what I tell you to do, and you follow my command, and you do A through B and C and D, there's no check you can't write, because I will back that check. That's it. You have nothing to worry about. But if you think it's you, and it's not me, God says, you know something? So you're on your own. When you're on your own, the weight is so weighty, the distraction is all-consuming, you don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. And that's what it's all about. So being a human being, you have to meet certain criteria for God to get involved. The world to come, there's no physicality. There's no needs. Now you're there to receive what you deserve. You lived a life to create a relationship. Based on the degree of working on that relationship, now you have that relationship. And that's speaking about after the person passes away. So all this, satisfying your sexual desires, satisfying your food desires, whether it's hedonism or gluttony, whatever it is, this is due to a deficiency, to a negative that exists within the physical, in the person. We spent 40 years in the desert. We ate manna. The manna was absorbed in the inner organs. There was no waste. They didn't have to do the bodily functions. It satisfied, nourished them at every level. And it was spiritual nourishment. The amount that each person needed would fall every day. You would consume it. You didn't even leave any over. If you would try to leave it over, it would become putrid. And every day you had faith God would provide the daily amount that each person needs. And this went on for 40 years. And there were no guarantees. But what was it? It was to create a mindset that you have to have trust in God. If God said it will fall every day, it did fall for 40 years. Therefore, a Jew is already oriented that his perspective is, if you live, but why did God provide that? Because God wanted the Jews to be fully involved and immersed in serving him, whether it's studying Torah, doing the commandments. That was the whole idea of the manna. There's no distraction, no physical ailment. Even their clothing would grow on them. The clothing didn't wear out for 40 years. A child had outer garments. As he grew, the garment grew with him. Mm-hmm. This was a miracle. There were no needs. All God wanted, you should be not distracted, be fully immersed in serving him. Because that ultimately will provide for you a worthiness that when you leave this world, you'll merit the ultimate. But there are no needs. The physical world, there are needs, and we're needy. And those needs have certain negative side effects, whether it's called distraction, whether it's called illness, whether it's called pain or worry, or whatever you want to call it. So if you could take the pill, and that would be the equivalent like the manna. Mm-hmm. Now, if my perspective is, the only reason why I'm working and I need is because I want to provide what I have. Let's in the food area. Let's say you have, your father owns a warehouse, every type of suit, every type of haberdashery you have. He's a haberdasher. You don't have to earn money. You can pick any suit you want whenever you want to go, put it on, and whatever. What about if you're on a desert island? And there's nobody there. You don't have to wear anything special. You just have to clothe your nakedness. And you have a library of books. All you have to do now is study day and night. If you have an interest in studying, that's paradise. You have no interest because you're a buffoon and you want to sit at the creek and catch tadpoles. That's a different story. But if you're a person of intellect and understand what the value is, you'd be fully immersed and say, thank God I don't have to be busy addressing my physical needs. I have no physical needs on this desert island. I don't have to prove anything to anybody because I'm here myself, just me and God. You is not permitted to put himself in the position of temptation. What does that mean? We said many times, if a person is confronted with challenges, you should know the only reason why you have that challenge is God presented because you have the ability to overcome that challenge. Because if you don't, it's not a challenge. It's beyond your capacity. What about a person who puts himself in the position where God didn't present that challenge? Give you an example. A person wants to show that he's able to control his sexual desire. And he's go into a brothel and be exposed to everything, which erotic, and he says, I won't do it. You know something? Who said you won't? Who said you won't cross that line? You put yourself off on a limb, and you're literally tottering at the very end. Who said you can be able to pull yourself back? You have no right to do that, because you don't know. If you find yourself in an environment which the environment is contrary and contradictory to spirituality, if you're there, you have the means to contend with it. But to put yourself there, where God didn't put you there, how do you know you have the ability to deal with all the issues of that environment? You don't know. Therefore, you have no right to put yourself there. Avraham Avinu, who presented monotheism to the world, he was born in a pagan world. That's the situation. And he came upon truth. What did he do with that truth? He disseminated it. And he changed the face of the map. He introduced monotheism to a pagan world. But if you're here and you want to go into a pagan world, and you're going to what? And say, I'm going to introduce monotheism. You know something? Who says you're going to survive that pagan world? Maybe you're going to be compromised. And you're going to assume some of those paganistic beliefs. You have no right to go there. All right. Talmud says, St. Louis is the best zoos in the United States are in St. Louis and in California. In where was it? San Diego. The San Diego Zoo and St. Louis Zoo are the best zoo. The show things there which you don't see in other zoos. So remember, I used to visit St. Louis many times. I used to take my kids to the St. Louis Zoo. They had the bird pavilion. When you went into that bird pavilion, you saw birds, exotic birds like from South America. They literally looked like they were made of wax. The beaks, the plumage, the beauty is not to be believed. Purple, yellow, and the different hues of these colors. I'm telling you, you were exposed to it, you've never seen such beauty. Unbelievable. So the Gemara tells us, why did God create the world with multicolors? Like the example I gave, the plumage of these birds and the shapes, because a human being needs stimulation. And when you stimulate it, it brings out certain abilities or functions and touches your senses that you're activated. If everything would be drab green, right? Like they say, in Russia during the winter, because the winters are long and they're dark, that's why they have such an alcoholism issue in Russia at one time. They used to drink, people went into a depression. So if all society, all existence would be drab, everybody would become depressed. So God created beauty within existence, colors and shapes and this and that when you're touched by it, it actually stimulates you. When you're stimulated, you're motivated to do many things, and it uplifts you. But that's why you're being stimulated. You're being stimulated just to be stimulated? No, to function in the proper context. Yeah, everybody has to be stimulated. You have to be motivated. So I'm saying, if a person needs the Grand Canyon, because he needs that level of relaxation and vacation to re-energize, to recharge his batteries, to get going again, you go there. You have to go to the Swiss Alps to see God's nature, the beauty. You go there if that's what you need. But if you don't need it, it's a distraction. There's no reason to go there. It's like a person that's fully healthy, he's taking vitamins. What are you taking vitamins? Well, because they say it's healthy, but you're healthy, you don't need the vitamins. What are you taking the vitamins for? The child. Oh, ask the question again.
So I asked Rabbi if God knows the human being is quite fragile, and putting these distractions, these stepping stones, whatever it is, if you take your child to the zoo and the zoo becomes a fascination, and then the child goes every day to the zoo and spends hours every day at the zoo, because that's the human nature of a being. So, and that's true for eating as well. If you eat manna, that's all you know. But if you taste a thick steak,
Good question. Good question. Very good question. We read in Pirkei Avos, Ezel Chacham Harosa Nolad. Who's the wise man? The one who sees the ramifications of behavior of anything you do. If you could think 10 steps ahead and you understand that at the 10th step, you're going off a cliff, you don't take the first 8 steps, even though they seem to be secure steps, because when you reach the 10th, you're going off the cliff. But you got to be smart and wise for that. You have to have foresight. If you understand, let's say you take your child as a child and you feed him fast food as a child. Initially, as a small child, it's not going to affect him negatively, but you're actually orienting him that his taste buds and his whole being isn't the fast food. And when he becomes a teenager, he's become obese. And something, if you're smart, you don't start him on that diet. You don't allow him even to begin eating that kind of food, knowing ultimately he's actually going to eat unhealthy, and ultimately he's going to compromise his health. The same idea. If going to the zoo, you understand, it may bring to that, then you don't take your kid to the zoo. There are other levels of entertainment you could give him or learning experiences. It doesn't have to be that, because ultimately he'll become obsessed with it. You don't want him to go there. You ever see a guy walking around who looks like a monkey? You know? And all he wants to eat is peanuts and bananas. They said, "What happened to you?" His father did overkill at the zoo. He used to climb over the fence in the Bronx Zoo on the day that you used to have to pay to get in. Okay. So he looks like a monkey, behaves like a monkey. Okay. They had what was called the monkey flu. People, whatever it was called. How do you think these guys got it? They got too close to the monkeys. Hitzkiah, the king of Judah, he did not get married because he didn't want to engage in procreation. Why? Because he had seen through his divine vision, he's going to have a son who will be the most evil king in the history of the Jewish people. Isaiah the prophet comes to him and says, and he became deathly ill. And he didn't know why he became deathly ill. So Isaiah the prophet says, something? Now that you're in your sickbed, you will never leave it alive. He says, what did I do? And he was a tzaddik. He says, you had an obligation to procreate, to get married, have a child, and you didn't. So God is punishing you. He says, but if I have that child, he's going to be evil. And the havoc he's going to wreak on the Jewish people is going to be disastrous. Therefore, I didn't engage. So you know what the prophet said to him? Don't get involved with God's hidden agenda. That's God's business. That's not your business. You do your best. The way things are going to manifest themselves, that's not your business. Every person in life has choice. You can raise your child to your best ability, responsibly. What's going to be down the pike? You did your best. And you're not held accountable for this. Not at all. God forbid, you don't know what's going to happen. You raise a child, the child coarsely gets hit by a car and dies. God forbid. Do you have control over that? You have no control. There are many things in life we have no control. All we have to do our best. God does not ask you to do more than do your best. Be responsible, raise your child according to what you're supposed to raise him. He may be affected, this, that. That's not your concern. Each person has his own choice. He can do whatever he wants. What if you raise a child and when he's an adult, he chooses to go south? You may be pained by it, but you have no relevance to that. That's his decision. That's his choice.